I was on my second ride of the morning, and the air in Boise was already sharp with late autumn chill. My old Honda idled softly outside a beauty salon on Grove Street, heater buzzing faintly. The moment the back door opened, a strong whiff of expensive perfume filled the car, followed by the staccato rhythm of acrylic nails tapping a phone screen. Yeah, Mom, I'm headed to the salon now. Hair color, lash lift, Mani refresh, basically half a day. Ugh, exhausting, but what can you do? Beauty's pain, right? The girl in the back seat didn't even glance at me. Just kept talking, her voice loud and nasal, flicking her freshly done hair like we were filming a reality show. As we pulled onto the main road, she sighed dramatically. Honestly, I should have just walked. They sent this beat-up car that feels like it's driving over gravel. She wasn't wrong about the bumps. Boise's roads were never smooth this time of year. But her words weren't about the pavement. They were about me. My car. My life. Why is it so cold in here? She snapped suddenly, pulling her white faux fur coat tighter. The heat's on, I replied without turning around. Well, turn it up then. I'm freezing. We're already pulling in, I said, easing up to the curb. That'll be $16.50. She blinked like I'd just spoken a different language. $16.50? For this. She looked around the car, scoffing. This is barely a car. I could have Ubered for less. I shrugged. The fare is calculated in advance. It's listed when you book. I don't read that stuff. I just call and go, she said, rummaging through her designer purse with exaggerated annoyance. I'd met her kind before. The type who dropped hundreds on lashes and latte art but raised hell over a $16 ride. The ones who saw drivers like me as part of the scenery. Invisible until inconvenient. She finally yanked out a crumpled $100 bill and a faded 50. Here, she said sharply, thrusting the money toward the front. I counted quickly and held out my hand. You're short 15. You're kidding, right? She gasped, eyes wide. You're seriously going to hold me over 15 cents. Not cents, I said calmly. Dollars. Oh my God, she muttered, digging through her coin pouch like it personally offended her. Finally, she slapped the remaining coins into my palm with a grimace. Take it and let me out. You're free to go, I replied with a tight smile, unlocking the doors. She stormed out in her stilettos, nearly slipping on a patch of wet leaves, and stomped toward the salon like a goose in heels. Watching her flail, I couldn't help but let out a slow breath. I reached for the pack of cigarettes I kept tucked in the glove compartment, rolled down the window, and lit one with shaking fingers. No one tells you this part when you sign up to drive people around for a living, that you'll be both chauffeur and emotional punching bag. It wasn't just the car they judged. It was me. No matter how early I woke up, how many hours I worked, to some people, I'd always be just the woman behind the wheel. Disposable, replaceable. And yet I kept driving. Sometimes after rides like that, I'd catch my own reflection in the rearview mirror and think, you used to sit behind a desk, remember? Not that it was glamorous. But there was a time not too long ago when I wore slacks and typed emails in a warm office, not thermal gloves gripping a cold steering wheel. Back then, I was a front desk associate at a local insurance firm. The job wasn't demanding. I answered phones, filed paperwork, scheduled appointments. I even had my own little cubicle with a fake plant and a corkboard where Lily's crayon drawings hung like masterpieces. It paid just enough to get by if I stretched every dollar and skipped a few meals. But then the economy dipped. Gas went up. Rent crept higher. Groceries became something I strategized like a battlefield. Eli was growing. Lily needed new winter boots, and no matter how many hours I logged, I still came up short. I started staying late for unpaid overtime, hoping someone upstairs would notice. No one did. The final straw was a Friday morning. I opened my banking app and saw the red numbers glaring back at me. I had 3 bills overdue and $12 to my name. That night, I I sat at the kitchen table long after the kids were asleep and did something reckless. I Googled how to make money fast in Boise. The results were what you'd expect. But one line stood out. Drive your car, make your schedule, earn daily. I clicked. Within a week, I was filling out paperwork for my commercial license. I started driving nights and weekends, testing the waters. Then, one Monday, I walked into the office, handed in my notice, and stepped out into the freezing morning with a strange mix of terror and relief. My mother didn't take it well. You went to college for this? To cart strangers around like some motel shuttle, she barked over the phone. I went to college to survive, I replied flatly. You had a stable job, Tessa. A good one. It wasn't good if it kept my kids hungry, I said. Then came Aunt Susan. Honey, have you seen gas prices lately? What if someone robs you? Or worse? I let her talk, but inside I'd already made peace. I didn't need stability, I needed income. Enough to cover real life, not just pretend everything was fine while the fridge sat half empty. Driving wasn't glamorous, no. But neither was being broke with 2 kids and no options. By the time I flicked out the cigarette and turned the key in the ignition, I was back in the present. Another ride was already waiting. I hadn't eaten all morning, just a cup of burnt coffee and the last bite of Lily's leftover toast. By noon, my stomach had started to protest. So I pulled over at the neighborhood grocery store, one of those chains with fluorescent lights that hum like an old fridge, and grabbed a couple of cherry turnovers from the bakery aisle and a small bottle of orange juice. Something cheap, quick, easy to eat in the car. The line was long. Everyone was buying staples, flour, rice, canned soup. You could always tell when the first of the month hadn't hit yet. I stood behind a woman bundled in a faded pink coat that hung loose on her small frame. Her gray hair peeked out from beneath a knitted beanie, and her hands trembled slightly as she placed her items on the belt. A bag of store-brand oats and a loaf of white bread, the cheapest kind. The cashier scanned them. That'll be $4.40, she said. The old woman fumbled through a coin purse, then stopped. Her shoulders slumped. I must have left my money at home, she whispered. You can put the bread back if you want, the cashier offered gently. The woman hesitated, her lips pressed tight. I didn't even think. I stepped forward, tapped my card on the reader. It's on me, I said. She turned slowly to look at me. Her eyes were sharp, pale blue, and held something that made me pause, not confusion or gratitude, but a strange sort of clarity, like she was seeing something I couldn't. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know, I replied. She took the small bag with both hands, nodded once, and then smiled. Not the polite kind of smile. It was knowing. You'll be all right, sweetheart, she said. Don't worry so much. You've already made the hardest choice. I blinked. Excuse me. But she was already shuffling toward the door, slow but steady. I stood there, card still in hand, heart beating a little too fast for a moment that should have meant nothing. It was just bread, just oatmeal, just a kind gesture. And yet, somehow it felt like something had been set in motion, something I couldn't explain. I walked back to my car, sat behind the wheel, and bit into the turnover without tasting it. That woman's words echoed inside me, quiet and persistent. You'll be all right. There were nights when I looked at Eli sleeping and wondered how I ever lived without him. How a boy who didn't share my blood could become the center of my universe, just the same. I first met him when he was 4. Jason had picked him up from his ex's house and brought him straight to my apartment like we were already one big, happy family. This is Eli, he said, tousling the boy's hair. If you want, he can be yours too. It was such a Jason thing to say. Charming, careless, like love was a transaction. But Eli, he looked up at me with these solemn, curious eyes, and something shifted. I wasn't afraid, just unsure. Could I really mother a child who wasn't mine? Turned out, I didn't have to figure it out. My heart did it for me. I had Lily, of course. She was 2 at the time, stubborn as a goat and sweet as strawberries. And when Eli started following her around, mimicking her every move, She decided he was her brother. That was that. Jason and I married in a courthouse ceremony with a cheap bouquet and promises we both wanted to believe. I thought we could be a family. I really did. But then came the bottles. At first, they were tucked away in the cabinet above the fridge, just to relax, he'd say. Then they were under the sink, in the trunk, hidden behind the water heater. He started missing dinners. Then he stopped showing up to school events. Then he started raising his voice. The final crack came late one night when Lily had a fever and Eli had wet the bed. I needed help. I begged him to get up. He rolled over and slurred. "They're not even both yours." That was it. I filed for divorce the next morning. He didn't fight me, didn't show up to the hearing, just vanished into his own mess. And when the dust settled, Eli stayed with me. Not because I had to, not because the court ordered it, but because he looked at me and said, "Mama, can I still stay here?" How could I say no? We scraped by. I worked part-time jobs, stretched every cent. There were nights I skipped dinner so the kids could eat. I'd walk Lily to preschool and Eli to kindergarten with a smile, then cry in the car before heading to my shift. I was always tired, always behind on something, but we had each other. That mattered. Eventually, I pulled myself out of the past and blinked at the road ahead. Another client was waiting, another mile to go, but that memory stayed with me like a soft echo in my chest. The job at the corner grocery store wasn't glamorous, but it was a lifeline. I found the listing taped to the glass door after dropping the kids at school, now hiring, retail assistant. Apply inside. I walked in on a whim, filled out the application on the spot, and started the next day. It was a modest store, stocked with everything from dish soap to garden gloves to discount cereal. I worked the register, stacked shelves, mopped floors, and ran the occasional return. For the first time in years, I had a steady schedule and just enough energy left at the end of the day to help Lily with homework and read Eli bedtime stories without falling asleep halfway through. My first paycheck went straight to winter coats and boots for the kids. The second, I saved for a set of tires before the Boise snow hit. By the third, I bought a skein of soft gray yarn and crocheted Lily a new scarf with my own hands. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And enough felt like a miracle. After a year, the store manager, Becky, recommended me for a promotion. Our district supervisor, a tightly wound woman named Melissa Parker, called me into her office one Thursday morning. "We're about to have an opening," she said, brushing imaginary lint off her blouse. "Our current store manager is going on maternity leave soon. I've noticed you're efficient, reliable." I blinked. "You're offering me the manager position." "Temporarily," she clarified. "Don't get too comfortable. But yes, it comes with a raise and responsibility. Think you can handle it?" I nodded. I could. I had to. The first week was chaos. Schedules were a mess, inventory logs didn't match deliveries, and our sales reports had glaring gaps. I stayed late, sifted through receipts, rechecked order forms. Something didn't add up. Then I found it, a pattern. Weekly discrepancies, missing cash, phantom shipments. Melissa had been skimming for months. I didn't confront her right away. I waited, collected proof, kept everything documented. When she finally returned to train me on the books, I asked her about a missing $3,500 line item. She froze. "You planning to report me?" she asked quietly, eyes narrowing. "That depends," I said. "Return what you took, every penny, and I'll pretend it never happened." She scoffed. "You wouldn't dare. You're just a grocery clerk." I smiled. "No, I'm a mother with a mortgage, 2 kids, and no patience for people who steal from families just trying to get by." By sunset, the money was back. Quietly. In cash. Word spread faster than I expected. The staff began to treat me differently, not out of fear, but respect. They saw that I wouldn't throw them under the bus, that I protected what mattered. From that day forward, they called me boss, even though Melissa technically still held the title on paper. She never returned to our store. Not once. It started with split ends. I was on my lunch break, walking past a little salon tucked between a bakery and a vape shop when I caught a glimpse of myself in the window. The woman staring back at me looked tired. My hair, once a deep chestnut, had grown dull and uneven. My roots were streaked with gray, not in a graceful, silver fox kind of way, just neglected. My skin looked washed out. My clothes were practical, but shapeless. I stepped inside on impulse. The place smelled like hairspray and lavender. A young stylist with a nose ring and soft blue eyes greeted me. Walk in. I nodded. Just a trim. She looked at my hair, then looked at me. You sure that's all you want? I hesitated. Maybe something fresh? She smiled, the kind of smile that made you trust someone instantly. Let's make this fun. 2 hours later, I didn't recognize myself. She'd cut it into a layered bob that framed my face perfectly. The dull brown was gone, replaced by a warm honey blonde with lighter highlights that caught the light just right. My tired eyes looked brighter, my cheekbones sharper, my jawline somehow realigned by sheer magic. You're glowing, she said, handing me a mirror. I laughed, a real, unfiltered laugh that came from my gut. You're a magician. I'm just helping the real you show up, she said, brushing a few stray hairs from my shoulder. After that, I went straight to the discount boutique next door and tried on a sky blue dress with a cinched waist. It fit like it was made for me. I bought it, plus a little tube of lip gloss in a shade called Sunrise Peach. That night, I looked in the mirror and saw someone I hadn't seen in years. Not a mom, not a manager, not a survivor. Just me. The next day, Jason showed up unannounced with a crumpled bouquet of tulips and a box of cheap chocolate for Lily. When I opened the door, he stared blankly for a full 5 seconds before asking, is Tessa home? I folded my arms. Hi, Jason. His eyes widened. Holy hell, Tessa. You look different. I eat regularly now, I said, stepping aside to let him in. And I stopped cutting my own hair in the bathroom sink. He stood there awkwardly, holding out the flowers. You look amazing. I know, I said simply, and I meant it. He started coming in just after 5, like clockwork. Always bought the same things: chicken breast, laundry detergent, a 6-pack of mineral water, and occasionally a chocolate bar if it was on sale. I didn't think much of it at first. We had plenty of regulars, and Peter Hall seemed like just another face in the after-work crowd. But then he lingered, not in a creepy way, just longer than usual. He chatted with Becky while she restocked shelves, asked me about the weather when I rang him up. He remembered my name before I remembered his, and he never wore a ring. You've got a fan, Becky whispered one evening as we watched him walk out, paper bag tucked under his arm. Please, I muttered. He's just bored. A week later, he came in while I was in the back reviewing invoices. When I returned to the front, there was a wicker basket waiting on the counter, overflowing with fresh fruit, tied with a green satin bow. Becky grinned. It's for you, from your just bored guy. I pulled the little card from the ribbon. For the woman who somehow makes hard work look graceful. Pete sighed. It was sweet, thoughtful, and completely unnecessary. That night, I called the number he'd scribbled on the back of the card, just to say thank you. I appreciate the gesture, I told him, but I'm not looking for anything. He paused, then said, then let's call it a thank you for being kind to everyone. That's all. I didn't believe him. Not entirely, but he didn't push, and I respected that. Over the next few weeks, he kept coming in. Sometimes he'd help Becky carry boxes. Other times he'd just chat with the staff, ask about their kids, their weekend plans. It wasn't an act. He genuinely listened. And somewhere in that routine, I started to look forward to seeing him. We began talking on the phone in the evenings, brief conversations at first, then longer ones. He always waited until the kids were asleep, asking about my day, telling me about his. Peter had a calmness about him, a steadiness I didn't realize I'd been craving. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't try to fix me. He just showed up. And maybe I thought that's all I'd ever really needed. Someone who showed up. We got married on a rainy afternoon in early October. It was quiet, simple. Just me, Peter, the kids, and 2 friends as witnesses. No big dress. No string quartet. Just vows whispered with shaky voices and hands squeezed a little too tightly. For 6 months, everything felt right. Peter was kind, reliable. He made pancakes on Sundays, walked Eli to school when I opened the store early, fixed the broken cabinet doors in the kitchen without me asking. He kissed my forehead when I was tired and brought Lily strawberry milk, just because. I caught myself smiling at nothing sometimes, just from the peace of it all. Maybe I'd finally made it. Maybe this was what it looked like after the storm. But storms, I've learned, don't always announce themselves with thunder. I had to go to a 2-day retail conference in Twin Falls. Nothing major. Just a company event with boring workshops and boxed lunches. I left Peter with a full fridge, a schedule taped to the fridge, and 2 happy kids who'd begged me to bring back keychains. When I got home late Sunday, I noticed the silence first. No cartoons playing, no laughter, no music humming from the kitchen, just stillness. Then I smelled it, vodka and cigarette ash and something sour underneath. The front door was unlocked. I stepped inside and felt my stomach turn. The living room was trashed, couch cushions on the floor, empty bottles rolled near the baseboards. A tray of burned cookies sat on the table like some sad apology. I tiptoed past a pile of laundry into the kitchen. Peter was passed out at the table, head on his arms, an open bottle dangling from one hand. "Peter," I said quietly. "Nothing." I walked closer, heart pounding, and nudged his shoulder. He groaned, looked up, and his eyes were bloodshot, vacant. "You," he slurred. "You came back." I backed away. My hands shook, but I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I called an ambulance. Then I walked 2 houses down to Mrs. Carson's, where I found Lily and Eli curled up on her couch with a blanket and frightened eyes. "He scared us," Lily whispered. Eli just clung to my side without a word. Peter spent 10 days in detox. The doctors said it wasn't his first time, not even his third. I filed for divorce while he was still inside. When he got out, I handed him an envelope with cash, enough for a motel, food, and a deposit if he chose to get help. I let him keep the car, and I told him plainly, "You can visit Eli, but only sober. He stays with me." Peter didn't argue. He just nodded, pale and quiet. "You're right, Tessa," he said. "You always were." I thought that was the end of it. I thought he was gone for good. It was past midnight when I heard the banging. At first, I thought it was a dream, one of those jarring, half-real nightmares. But then came the second hit, louder. The front door shook in its frame. Glass rattled in the hallway. "Open up. Tessa!" I sat up, heart pounding. Eli and Lily were already awake, standing at my bedroom door in their pajamas, eyes wide with fear. Another crash. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911 with one hand, and pulled the kids into the room with the other. "Yes, I need help. My ex-husband is trying to break in. He's drunk. Please hurry." Peter was screaming now, slurring my name, calling me every awful thing he could think of. I locked the bedroom door and held the children close, whispering that it would be okay, even as my own voice shook. It took the cops 10 minutes to arrive. By then, Peter had kicked a dent into the bottom of the door and shattered one of the porch lights. They tackled him on the lawn, cuffed him while he thrashed and cursed. I watched from the window, clutching Eli's hand, while Lily buried her face in my shoulder. They took him to the station first, then transferred him to a psychiatric hold. He didn't make it through the night. His heart gave out. Years of alcohol, stress, and whatever else he'd done to his body had finally caught up. When the hospital called me the next morning, I felt numb. Not shocked, not relieved, just still. Peter Hall was gone. Legally, I was next of kin. What he left behind wasn't much. A beat-up sedan in my name, a box of old tools, and a pile of unpaid fines. I took the car, sold the tools, paid off the debts, and tried to forget the sound of the door shaking on its hinges at midnight. But some echoes don't go away. Some doors, once kicked in, never quite close the same again. Eli started getting tired all the time. At first, I thought it was just a growth spurt. Kids have their ups and downs, especially with school and changes at home. But then he started losing weight, fast. His skin turned pale, his appetite vanished. And no matter how warm the house was, he always said he felt cold. We went through a maze of doctors, blood tests, scans, second and third opinions. They poked and prodded and frowned behind clipboards, but no one could give me a clear answer. Words like atypical, nonspecific, and possibly autoimmune were thrown around, but none of them helped me sleep at night. He was admitted to St. Luke's downtown in late January. They gave him a private room. I think the nurses pitied me, this worn-down woman who sat at her son's bedside day after day, pretending to be strong while praying for a miracle she couldn't afford. Eli tried to be brave. He still smiled, still told silly jokes, still asked me how my day was even when he could barely lift his head. "Don't worry, Mom," he whispered once, gripping my hand with fingers that felt like paper. "I'm just saving up my energy for summer. We'll go to the park again, remember?" I nodded, and then I went into the hallway and cried so hard I thought I'd collapse. Around the same time, the grocery chain announced they were shutting down several locations due to budget cuts. Our store was one of them. My manager called me in, offered some half-hearted sympathy, and handed me a severance check that wouldn't even cover a month of Eli's medication. I didn't beg. I just nodded, went home, and reapplied to drive taxi again. The city hadn't changed. The streets were still cracked, the lights still flickered, and the clients still came with their attitudes and cheap perfume. But I didn't have the luxury of pride anymore. Every ride was a copay. Every tip was another day Eli got to stay in that hospital bed. We stopped buying anything we didn't absolutely need. I ate once a day, sometimes not at all. Lily offered to skip field trips to save money. I told her no. Some parts of childhood shouldn't have to pay the price for illness. After 3 months, Eli had grown, so weak that even the doctors stopped pretending. One of them, an older man with kind eyes and a quiet voice, sat me down in the hallway one evening. "We've done everything we can," he said gently. "There's nothing left to try. It might be time to bring him home. Let him spend his last days somewhere familiar, with peace, with you." I stared at him, refusing to cry, refusing to accept it. But deep inside, I was already grieving. It had been 2 nights since the doctor suggested bringing Eli home to die. I hadn't spoken much since. I stayed at his bedside, watching the rise and fall of his chest, counting seconds between each shallow breath. He barely spoke anymore, only smiled when Lily came to visit or when I whispered stories in his ear, like I used to when he was little. That afternoon, a nurse knocked lightly on the door. "Ms. Morgan," she said gently, "there's an older woman downstairs. Says she's here for Eli. She won't leave until she sees you." I frowned. Did she say her name? The nurse hesitated. She said you bought her bread once, at the store, and that she'd been waiting for the right time. My heart thudded once hard. I stood and walked downstairs, and there she was. Same pink coat, same knitted beanie, same sharp blue eyes. But this time, she looked even more certain, as if she'd been planning this moment for years. "You came," I whispered. She smiled. "Told you everything would be all right, didn't I? Now, take me to the boy." I didn't ask questions. I didn't have the strength to argue. I just led her upstairs, back into the sterile room where Eli lay motionless, pale against white sheets. "This is Aunt Lucille," I told the nurse when she raised a brow. "She's family." The old woman pulled a cloth bag from her arm. Inside was a metal dipper, a glass bottle of clear water, and a few linen cloths. She moved with surprising strength, like every motion had purpose. "You're not afraid?" she asked me. "I've already lost him," I said. "So no, I'm not." She nodded. "Good. Then sit, and don't interfere." She poured water into the dipper and dipped the cloth, gently pressing it to Eli's chest. He didn't flinch. His eyes stayed closed. I watched the water drip into a bowl below. It was black, thick and black like ink. What is that?" I whispered. "That's the illness," she said simply. For 7 days she came back. At dawn, at dusk. She never missed. Each time, she repeated the process. Same water, same cloth, same steady hand. And each time, the water darkened less. On the 3rd day, Eli opened his eyes and asked for toast. On the 4th, he sat up in bed and asked where his game tablet was. By the 6th, he was walking the hallway with the nurse, telling her jokes in a whispery voice. The doctors were stunned. "We don't understand it," one said. "There's no medical explanation, but his vitals are improving rapidly." I didn't try to explain. I just stood beside Aunt Lucille as she looked into the bowl on the 7th day and said, "There, it's clean. He's healed." And the water was clear, like nothing had ever been wrong. Eli came home 3 days before Christmas. He walked into the house on his own, backpack slung over one shoulder, a little thinner than before, but with color back in his cheeks and light back in his eyes. Lily had decorated the living room with handmade snowflakes, and Maddie, her 2-year-old, toddled up to greet his big cousin, like he was a superhero. I spent the next week doing something I hadn't done in years. Nothing. No alarms. No invoices. No double shifts. I cooked real food. I read books. I watched Eli and Maddie build pillow forts in the living room and let myself breathe. On December 31st, my old supervisor from the grocery chain called. She was panicked, polite, and persistent all at once. "Tessa, we're short-staffed. Everyone's on vacation or sick. We need you back." I waited a beat, then asked, "At the same salary?" "Well, yes, the standard rate." "Then no," I said simply. "You want me back? You increase the offer by 25%. Otherwise, keep searching." "You're price gouging us," she snapped. I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "No, I'm finally charging what I'm worth." She grumbled, muttered something under her breath, and hung up. 20 minutes later, she called back. "Fine," she said, 25% raise, but we need you on the 3rd. "I'll be there," I replied, "after breakfast." Lily overheard the call and laughed. "Look at you, Mom. Boss lady." I shrugged. Took me long enough. That night, we bundled up in layers and drove through downtown Boise to see the lights. Streets sparkled with white and gold. Fireworks popped in the distance. People laughed, danced, cheered into the freezing air. Maddie sat on Lily's shoulders, waving a tiny American flag someone handed him. Eli held a cup of hot cocoa with both hands, eyes wide as the sky lit up with blue and green bursts. I stood still in the middle of it all, overwhelmed not by the noise, but the quiet inside me. For the first time in so long, I didn't feel like I was fighting. I wasn't scrambling or bracing for the next blow. I was just here, alive, whole. I thought of Aunt Lucille. I hadn't seen her since the 7th day. She left without goodbye, just a nod at the door and a bowl of clear water in the sink. No return address, no trace, just healing in her wake. Wherever she was now, I hoped she was warm. I hoped she was loved. And more than anything, I hoped she knew what she'd done. For Eli, for me, for all of us. So I whispered it to the stars, just in case they carried messages. "Thank you. You were right. We're going to be okay."